Hi, this is Tom Spahn of Spahn Music. I've had the good fortune of working with some fine vocal coaches and musicians over the year. One that stands out for me would be Colin Romoff, who was the vocal coach for Sound of Music, My Fair Lady, Music Man, Gypsy. He played for Marilyn Monroe to sing for the president. And I learned a lot from him about how to set a song, and whether it's for a singer or for a writer, but you know, how to frame it. My years of working with Eartha Kitt as her musical director. I worked with her from 78 to 85, and she was just one of the most steady and consistent entertainers I've ever worked with. I always say I never did a bad show with her. She just brought everybody up to a standard. And I was fortunate that, you know, I had the opportunity to start with her by writing arrangements for her because she had lost many of them in mudslides and things in California in her home. And so I started off that way, and I ended up playing for her for about 7 years. And it was just a great lesson. I guess besides her musicality and her choices and just how she approached everything, I think the biggest thing I probably learned with her is fly first thing in the morning, low chances of delays. Working with Chapman Roberts, who I've working for decades, just a wonderful vocal arranger, has done, just incredible vocal arrangements for Five Guys Named Mo, Smokey Joe's Cafe. He even reaches back to the days with, Your Arm's Too Short to Box with God. He was the original black character in Hair. So he was in the original company of Hair back in the late 60s, early 70s. I guess it was the late 60s. And I've had the opportunity to work with him for many years, and currently we're working on a project with Steve Margocious, who's just an outstanding orchestrator. I saw his work probably 20 years ago when Tommy went on Broadway, and this is before I knew him, but I was so impressed with it when I had the opportunity to hear it. And through Chapman, I met with him, and Steve is currently writing a one-man show, and I'm helping him put the recordings together and put the presentation together so that he can sell the show. I was working with Sesame Street on some records, and I started with them in 1979-ish, and I still work with them here and there doing recordings. But back at the beginning, I had the opportunity to work with Cissy Houston on a song called Happy. And I got a note from them, from the contractor, that said, would it be all right if she brought her daughter to the session? I said, whatever Cissy Houston thinks is great, I'm with. Cissy Houston in 1979 was a big star, had some wonderful hits out. I was very pleased that we were getting her for the session. Fast forward, we're at the session at NOLA Recording, and the song was Happy, but it seemed like everyone wasn't happy. So I worked a little bit on it, and couldn't seem to get everybody on the same page. So I went out and asked Cissy and her daughter, are you happy? And Cissy didn't seem very happy. And so I said, well, then why don't we just call it a day? And of course she said, well, we're going to get paid. I said, you'll get paid, but there's no sense in us pushing it through to the limit if we're not happy. So I fast forward 3 or 4 years. I'm watching the Star Spangled Banner be sung by a young woman named Whitney Houston, and I realized that is Cissy Houston's daughter. And so I have the inimitable infamy of kicking Whitney Houston out of the studio. Can't always be right. I run with Sesame Street. It ran from about 1979, I would guess, where I did Big Bird Getting Ready for School. And then I did quite a few other little recordings and side things. And then it led to me, which led to them going to NOLA Recording for 20 years or so, 20 some years, maybe 25 years. At which time I was also in Studio B at NOLA and did a lot of things and, show to show, put the bubbles together for Elmo's World at the beginning of his show, which led to Elmo Tickle Me Elmo, which I did with Adrian Peters, one of the just magnificent producers that I ever worked with. Her way of producing was, as the performer was performing, they're obviously in a booth, they can't hear her, but her reviews would be, "Oh, that's good. Oh, I never want to hear that again. Oh, that's good. Oh, no, that I don't want it." And it was black and white. Well, a week later, we're going over the take, and I play something, and she would turn to me and go, "I thought I said I never want to hear that again." At which time I said, "Oh, okay, when you say you don't want to hear it, I'm going to get rid of it." And people said, "Oh, she must be so difficult to work with." And I have to tell you that she was probably one of the easiest people to work with because there was no hemming and hawing. She made her decision, and that was it. And we ended up putting Tickle Me Elmo together, which had a pretty good run on its own. And I've stayed with Sesame Street through the years, and I enjoy working with them. I enjoy the mission, and I enjoy talking to young kids and helping people get their message to them. I have 2 Emmys. I really physically only have one, but I have 2. The first one I won was in the 80s when sampling was just starting, and I did the Animal Orchestra for Sesame Street. They came to me. Sampling was brand new back then. This has to be 1985, 5-ish, yeah. And they came to me and said, "Can you get a pig to sing in tune?" And of course, my response was, "I've been doing it for years." And so we put the samples together. They sent a guy I was impressed with who had done all of the sound effects for the Maytag commercial when the washer machine was falling apart. And that's what I was impressed with. He came in, made all the pig and geese and chicken sounds. Then I tuned it up, put it on the keyboard. We made an arrangement, which is now on YouTube. You can see it, the Animal Orchestra with Sergio Jawa.
Those mandolinas play, sing, sing, everybody singing all their cares away. Life's so gay. Sing, sing, hey.
And he conducted it, and I won an Emmy for that. I won the Emmy. I didn't get the Emmy because Sesame Street never bought it. But I never knew that until 2005, I think. I won an Emmy for All My Children. I did Erica's last wedding, and we won an Emmy for that. And that one I did get an Emmy because ABC, I don't know whether Disney owned them then, but ABC bought everybody who won an Emmy. So when the Emmy people, when I called there, they called me and said that, I said, "Did I win an Emmy for the Animal Orchestra?" And they looked it up and they said, yeah, you won the Emmy. I said, "But I never got it." And they said, "Well, Sesame Street never bought it." So I love Sesame Street. I love their message. I always said, because I never really worked there, I was under contract, I used to say, "Sesame Street, where we spare every expense." Maybe someday I'll buy one, put my name on it. A year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago now, for coming up on April, I started working on a show called The World According to Mickey Grant. And I knew of Mickey Grant, but I really didn't know her. And of course, as you work on a show and you get involved with it, you find, you learn a lot. There's no better way than to dig in and find out what's going on. It was fun working on that show because one of my favorite moments was we were working on a piece with one of her songs, and Mickey had a real cha-cha, she had a real groovy way of looking at her music. And one of the two singers that were singing this song said, "Oh, it's so complicated, the rhythms." And I had to stop for a second and say, well, see, Mickey's not here anymore to discuss it. So what we're going to do is we're going to learn how Mickey performed it on the recordings that I have. And we'll learn that. And then after we've learned that, if you have a better suggestion, I'm all for it. The young lady who sang that, Patrice, I thought just moved along the most of anyone in the show of embodying Mickey Grant, because she took on my challenge, learned the piece, and there really was no better way to sing it than the way Mickey sang it. And we learned it, we put it up, led to all four of the performers being nominated for Best Actress and Actor in a Musical for the Adelco Awards. And all four of them won. Our show won. Our director won. I was nominated for musical director, but I lost. I want to win another Emmy, so let's you and I do it. Hi, this is Tom Spahn of Spahn Music, and for years on my Facebook page, I used to say, if you think you sound good in the shower, I can make you sound good with your clothes on. Let's do it. Bye-bye.